Hey girl, let's talk crime. On this episode of Hey Girl, Let's Talk Crime, we're going to be discussing the case of Grace Millane. 21-year-old University of Lincoln graduate Grace Millane was definitely living her best life. She had recently graduated with a marketing degree and began traveling on October 26th, 2018 as part of her gap year. So she was on a 2-week stay in New Zealand after backpacking around Peru and spending 6 weeks in South America. Grace arrived in New Zealand alone on November 20th, 2018. She explored and traveled around the Upper Island. During this time, she would be in constant contact with her friends and family, sending them pictures and videos and showing her day-to-day activities, and that she was really enjoying her trip. After New Zealand, Grace had planned to travel to the Philippines, Thailand, and Australia. 10 days later, she checked into a popular hostel in Auckland where she had shared a room with other travelers. The following day, Grace would meet up with a man that she had matched with on Tinder. Unfortunately, swiping right on this profile would cost Grace her life. Grace Emmy Rose Millane was born in Essex, England on December 2nd, 1996 to her parents Gillian and David. She was the youngest of 3 children and had 2 older brothers. Grace was described as someone who was very adventurous, very social, family-oriented, and very creative. October 2018, she began her travels. She visited Peru before spending 6 weeks in South America. On November 20th, she arrived in New Zealand, and just 10 days later, she was in Auckland, New Zealand, and checked into the base backpackers hostel on Queen Street. On November 30th, Grace had matched on Tinder with a man that was in the city. However, that evening, she went on a date with someone else. On December 1st, she leaves her hostel at around 5:37 p.m. and travels to the Sky City complex. There, she takes a photo of a Christmas tree outside, and then she sends this photo to her family, and this would be the last message that Grace's family would receive from her. Now, Grace was initially pretty iffy on meeting up with this person that she matched with, but after a bit of a conversation, she decided that they were going to meet. Showing up in a knee-length black dress, shortly before 6 p.m., she and her Tinder date visited a few different bars, ultimately ending their night at the Bluestone Room Bar, where they continued their night of drinking and eventually began to make out. Now, at one point during the evening, Grace had gotten up and possibly to go to the restroom, and the man had began going through her purse for some reason. Their evening was mostly caught on CCTV footage, and it seemed to be going pretty well. Grace had actually messaged a friend of hers during the date a few different times, talking about how well they clicked and that he was an oil manager and lived in a hotel in the city, and that she would update her later with everything that had gone on after the date was over. After they left the Bluestone Room Bar, they then walked arm in arm the short distance that it took to get to the hotel that her Tinder date was living in, which was the City High Hotel. The following day, December 2nd, was Grace's 22nd birthday. Her friends and family were sending her text messages and reaching out to her on social media to wish her a happy birthday. However, Grace was not responding. Because Grace was in constant contact with her friends and her family daily, this was unlike her and did cause quite a bit of concern. By December 5th, Grace's parents contacted Auckland police and reported her missing. Initially, the police did not expect any foul play. They learned that Grace did not return to her hostel the night of December 1st, but just thought that she had met some new friends and was staying there since her belongings were still in the room. With CCTV footage around the city, police were able to follow Grace's movements around that evening and the man that she matched with, who was identified as 26-year-old Jesse Kempson. The evening that Grace was last seen, she had updated her Facebook profile picture. Multiple people had commented on it, and one specifically said, "Beautiful, very radiant." This comment was from Jesse Kempson, the man that she had went on a date with that evening. Something interesting also, that Jesse had posted a status that same evening as well, apologizing for all the hurt that he has caused, the people that he has betrayed, and so forth. But who exactly was this guy behind this profile? Jesse Kempson was a 26-year-old man born in Wellington, New Zealand. His parents separated when he was just 9 years old, and he was raised by his father and his grandfather. Both of his parents remarried other people, and Jesse did live in Australia for some time and also was convicted of drinking and driving and also arrested for disorderly conduct. Jesse was estranged from most of his family, especially his mother, and he became obsessed with online dating in his early 20s. So people that do Jesse would describe him as a pathological liar. He would lie about things that normal people would not lie about, such as having cancer. He also said that he was related to famous athletes and that he had signed with big sports teams. Jesse once told a landlord that he was waiting on his money from his contract that he had signed with his sports team. After 8 weeks of the landlord waiting for rent money, this landlord was able to reach out to that sports team and find out that Jesse had lied and made the whole thing up. He was currently living at the City Life Hotel and told staff there that he was a manager for a big company, when in fact his room was actually being paid by state benefits. Jesse couldn't keep a job or a place to stay, and at the time that he had matched with Grace on Tinder, he was living at the City Life Hotel, where he told staff that he was a manager of a really big company, when in fact his stay was being paid by state benefits. And now with footage, police wanted to talk to Jesse, as they believed that he was the last person with her before she vanished. So Jesse came into the police station, and according to Jesse, there wasn't anything out of the ordinary that happened when he went on the date with Grace. He said that they met at Sky City, went to a burger place. He stated that he had kissed her on her cheek, they hugged, and then they made plans to meet up on the following day. The date ended around 10 p.m. She went her way and he went his. Jesse also said the following day that he had attempted to message Grace and realized that she had unmatched with him the previous evening, and he hadn't communicated with her since. But like any other time, it wasn't long before Jesse's lies would surface and authorities would begin to see how this seemingly perfect date was anything but. So on the evening of December 1st, Jesse and Grace arrived at his hotel, the City Life Hotel. They both got on to the elevator and exited on his floor. That was the last time that Grace was seen alive. Between 1:29 and 6 a.m., Jesse's phone records show that he took photos of Grace's body. He searched online for things such as rigor mortis, carpet cleaner, extra large bags, hottest fires, and other various searches. He also viewed pornography during this time. Around 8 a.m., Jesse leaves his hotel and purchases a suitcase as well as cleaning supplies. He then goes to a car rental company and rents a red Toyota Corolla. Hours later, Jesse goes on another Tinder date. But something interesting is that that woman said that the date was so uncomfortable for her that the only thing Jesse was talking about was hiding bodies, and claimed that all of his friends were in law enforcement. She felt so uneasy about the date that she did not want to get into his car with him, and when he offered to walk her to her car, she actually lied and said that it was in the opposite direction of his, so that he would not follow her or know what her car looked like, and they never spoke again. So after this date, he ends up renting a carpet cleaning machine. And there he tells staff that he had red wine stains that he needed to clean out of his carpet. A short time later, he Googled flesh-eating birds and are there vultures in New Zealand. Around 9:30 p.m., Jesse is seen with 2 suitcases on a hotel cart. He then loads them into the rented red Toyota Corolla. Around 7 a.m. the following day, he was seen buying a shovel, and just 2 hours later, he was seen power washing the car before returning it back to the car rental company where it had been rented out by another customer. On December 5th, the same day that Grace's family reported her missing, Jesse is seen dumping things in various locations around Auckland. So the police end up showing up to the City Life Hotel because they want to talk to Jesse. And as they were at the front desk, Jesse walks in, and when he sees them, he walks back out and he begins to take off. However, they were able to catch him and bring him in the police station for more questioning. While Jesse Kemper was sticking to his story that absolutely nothing happened the evening with Grace, police did find a lot of bloodstains in his hotel room. David Millane, Grace's father, was in Auckland by December 7th and made a plea for her safe return. He stated that the last time that the family had contact with Grace was on December 1st. He spoke about how this was completely out of character for Grace and that the family was very, very concerned. Although they had not named Jesse, police did say that they had a person of interest in Grace's disappearance, and at this point they had evidence that this was now a homicide investigation. December 8th, 2018, Jesse was taken into custody, and this time he had a new story. Jesse states that Grace was talking to him that evening about 50 Shades of Grey, the movie. And Jesse said that that evening began with them making out, and then they began having normal sex. And as time went on, Grace had asked him about getting into bondage, more violent sex, and they ended up on the floor. Grace then told him to hold her throat, and then he remembers going to the shower and falling asleep. He had just assumed that Grace had left after he had fallen asleep. However, Grace did not leave. Grace was dead. According to Jesse, he then panicked and went into shock. He then put her body into a suitcase, and that is when he went to bury her. It was at that point that Jesse Kemper was arrested for the murder of Grace Millane. Once investigators searched Jesse's room, they saw just how sinister the night had turned. Although Jesse had tried to clean up, Grace's blood was all over the floor in his hotel room. Shortly after 4 p.m. that day, officers did locate the body of 22-year-old Grace Millane. Her body was located about 12 miles from Auckland, and although not officially confirmed, they strongly believed that it was Grace and ended the search for her. Many people were affected by Grace's death. Thousands of mourners showed respect by honoring her at vigils across the country. The Prime Minister issued a public apology to Grace's family and let them know the entire country was supporting them.
On behalf of New Zealand, I want to apologise to Grace's family. Your daughter should have been safe here, and she wasn't, and I'm sorry for that.
I've advised the family through the police if there's anything that we can do to assist, we are here to help with that. Jesse Kempson was then formally charged with Grace's murder. His first appearance in Auckland District Court was on December 10th, just 5 days after Grace was reported missing. And during this court appearance, his defense team had asked for a name suppression that initially was denied. It then was granted after an appeal, and it was good for initially 20 days. Although the media outside of New Zealand could use Jesse's name, no one in the country was able to. Now, allegedly, this name suppression was to ensure that he would receive a fair trial, but I have other thoughts. and we'll talk about that in a moment. A pathologist confirmed that Grace had been strangled. She had bruising on her neck as well as her arms and chest, which indicated that she had been pinned down. It also stated that the pressure on her neck was held at a minimum of 4 minutes, enough to end her life. On January 10th, 2019, hundreds of people came to Grace's funeral at the Brentwood Cathedral in Essex to pay their respects. Jesse Kemper's trial for the murder of Grace Millane would begin on November 4th, 2019 and would last for 3 weeks. Jesse showed absolutely no emotion for his crime, insisting that he was not guilty. His defense team had discussed Grace's alleged sexual history, stating that she had engaged in BDSM prior to this incident and that although this was a very tragic situation, it was consensual sex that ended very terribly. Also, during his trial, it was revealed that the photos that he had taken of Grace's body after he killed her, he had uploaded to a pornography website. 3 women who had gone on dates with Jesse after meeting on Tinder had also testified that he got pleasure from pain and humiliation of others. On November 22nd, a jury of 7 women and 5 men returned a guilty verdict after just 5 hours of deliberation. On February 21st, 2020, Jesse Kemper was sentenced to life in prison and has to complete at least 17 years before parole is even an option. Now, let's get back to the name suppression. I believe that he and his lawyers fought so hard for this, not so much so that he could have a fair trial, but because Jesse knew what he had done. So in early 2018, 8 months prior to Jesse murdering Grace, he had raped another British tourist. Now, when this woman had seen his face in the media, she immediately went to police and told everything that he had done to her. So according to this woman, they had matched on Tinder. And once the date was over, when she refused to have sex with him, he got very angry and he raped her. She said in court, "Your mother rejected you, and that may go some way towards explaining your attitude toward women." She read a statement in court stating how she had woken up screaming and crying many nights, having flashbacks and nightmares about the assault. She was terrified that he would come back and try to kill her. Every time she went to sleep, she saw his eyes popping out of his head in anger, checking her doors multiple times to ensure that they were locked. She said that she was not afraid of Jesse anymore and that she was surrounded by the love and support that she needed in order to get through this very traumatic experience. After being found guilty and sentenced to 3 years for this rape, he yelled at the judge saying, "You have no reason to convict me, you're full of shit, mate." He was also convicted of terrorizing his girlfriend for months in 2017. So Jesse had threatened her with a butcher knife. She said that he had forced her to perform sexual acts and assaulted her multiple times, also telling her that he was sent by the CIA to kill her. And for those crimes, he was sentenced to 7.5 years. The additional 11.5 years that was added on top of his murder charge are to be served concurrently, which means alongside his minimum 17-year sentence. The rape and abuse on his ex-girlfriend were not heard during his murder trial. Unfortunately, David Millane, the father of Grace Millane, was diagnosed with terminal cancer after her trial was over. After a short battle, he did pass away in his hometown of Wickford, England. He is survived by his wife, Gillian, and his sons, Declan and Michael. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Hey Girl, Let's Talk Crime. Join me next Monday at 12 p.m. as we discuss the 2011 gruesome murder of 27-year-old Lauren Giddings.